Good morning, everyone. It's Tuesday, and we are so glad you're here at Writers Chat, where craft connects community. We're so happy that if you're with us live, that you're here, or if you're watching the replay on YouTube, thank you, and be sure to hit the subscribe button down below, and feel free to leave us any comments of what you think of the episode. Today, we are excited because we're going to do something maybe a little bit different for us during this Come Write With Us episode. But before I pass it over to Melissa, I would like to pray for us and for our speaker, Patricia Tiffany Morris. Let's do that, shall we? Oh, Father God, I just thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you for the love and grace that you give us. I pray for Tiffany, especially right now, Lord, that you would, for Patricia, that you would calm her heart, calm her nerves, Father, and would you bring out what you have for us today? And what isn't for us will just fall by the wayside, and Patricia will be calm with that. And we thank you for all that you're going to do today. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Melissa to introduce Patricia to you.
Good morning, everybody. And before I do introduce our guest, just want to let you know that this is a Come Write With Us, where you are welcome to stay on camera if you like to join in the live exercises. So it's up to you whether you want to be on camera or want to stay in the hidden audience. We open that invitation up to you now. And feel free to pull out your favorite notebook or whip up a document on your computer to get ready to do some of these exercises with us, because it's going to be a fun time. So, for those who are new, Come Write With Us is kind of a session that we started. Oh, I don't remember how many years now ago that we started doing them. Brandy was the one who began it, and it was a really, yeah, probably somewhere around 3 years or so. A really a cool idea to just spend time as a writers group, learning new craft, or just kind of playing as writers, because it's really important for us as writers to have that creative outlet. And so these Come Write With Us sessions have become a favored time, I think, among our group. We really enjoy them. And Patricia is actually joining us for a second one. She has done a poetry workshop with us before, and it was really fun. So we're looking forward to this return episode. For those of you who maybe don't know Patricia, this is the first time that you've met her. I've got a little bio here of hers that I want to read for you. Patricia Tiffany Morris is an eclectic writer, illustrator, and font designer who blends poetry, faith, and visual storytelling. A poet with three names, she writes about hope after the storms of grief. Her picture book, Grief Like Rain, Hope Like Sunlight, placed first in children's literature and won best in conference at the West Coast Christian Writers Conference, and was named a double winner and double finalist in the 2024 Children's Book International Award. Her work appears in Guideposts, Lyrical Iowa, the NFSPS, National Federation of State Poetry Societies anthologies, and she creates under Tiffany Inks Studio LLC. And so today she's going to share with us some new poetry forms. Well, for some of us, some of you will be familiar with them. So it'll be a fun exercise in what you know. But for those of us who aren't, it's going to be a new one today. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Patricia, to get us started.
Welcome. I started out thinking I could say good morning, poets, because at the base of all of this, we are all poets. We write, we think in analogies, we think in these different poetic elements. If we write, we're going to structure our writing in some form or fashion. And one of the forms I wanted to show you is a invent your own form. It is actually a fun setting. So with all of these forms I'm going to show you, and I picked a few more since I gave Melissa my description, and there's all of these analogies out there, like what writing poetry is, what it isn't. And some of them are very clearly written, and others are just anything you write can be poetry. So there's a small little truth to that if you create a structure of some sort. And there's one form that has no structure. So we've got the whole gamut of whatever you write. I won the SELAH poetry contest this year for published poets. And I was thrilled because it was a prose poem, which the only form that has you write in paragraphs versus the typical line structure you see. So I'll show you just a little bit of that. We're going to experiment with these forms. Some are going to be familiar, some are going to be strange, but I want you just to keep pressing forward and look at how you can express your message or your thoughts to the world in a variety of different ways. So the sharing the screen here allows me to share a PowerPoint, and in the past it allowed me to only share that PowerPoint. So on my screen I can have my little notes and you can see just the PowerPoint. Well, today we looked and Zoom has a different setting. So you are going to get to see just a smidgen of my notes for the events because I hadn't taken time to print it and didn't know that was a difference. So you might see a sample off to the right. I want to encourage you to look at the PowerPoint instead of my notes. But as I share this, there'll be a little bit of let's see if I can move Zoom out of the way and you'll see me a little bit here. All right, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to show the PowerPoint off to the left and the notes off to the right. And let's see, I'm going to scroll back up to the front. I think I can do this. Let's see. New experiences are always challenging. All right, so here
Patricia,
is, yes.
if you want to, so we can see all of your screen, if you could make it a little bit bigger because it's hard to read what's on our right. And also you can minimize the speaker to where it's just one little square up at the top.
Can I do that from my end?
Should be able, yep. If you go to speaker view and minimize, you should be able maybe to do that. There you go.
Did I do what you had asked there? No, speaker view.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to see me.
But then if you,
My screen.
there should be a minimize at the top so that that takes it. Let me see.
Can you see my choices here? I'm looking.
No.
Hide self view?
Try that.
No, that's still me big. Speaker, my screen. Ooh.
I'm sorry, just go back to the way you were. Sorry. Since you were wanting us to read what was on.
No, I would like you
not
to read. Yeah, I would like you not to read the script.
Okay, there you go.
Just look at the PowerPoint here while I read off to the side or use these notes for myself.
Then I misunderstood. My apologies. Sorry
No
about
problem.
that.
No problem. Okay, so this is everything is an experiment. You can in any challenging situations, even writing, there's going to be very clear ways, and there's going to be, let's just try and see what works out. This is a total trial for presenting this way, and we're just going to blow through it. So poetry forms, what do you think of when people talk about writing poetry? It can be in terms of style, regarding forms, rhyme or not rhyme. Is it emotive, playful? You fill in the blank. And feel free to come on screen and just unmute yourself. There is many places where I'll just ask you to interact with something that's on the PowerPoint. What do you think?
I like rhyming when I think of poetry because of the era in which I grew up. Everything was rhyming.
Yes.
Prose was not a thing. So I don't dislike prose, but I prefer rhyming.
And us authors who write for children, we always think of rhyming because kids love rhyme.
Yes.
But, why not give kids something different if we can?
Yeah. Lisa.
Yeah, I just was going to say I also grew up in rhyming and structure and form, which I tend to gravitate towards. And toward. But I am beginning to open my mind a little bit more to free verse. And so that's been an interesting thing for me. And then, but I still love the structure. I did come across the style of the pantoum, and
Yes.
I like the pantoum a lot now. And sonnets, of course, I love sonnets.
Leslie, and you don't have to raise your hand. You can just feel free to, when there's a breath, go ahead and speak.
Okay, I have always loved poetry. I do like the rhyming because I also grew up with learning a lot of rhyming as a child, especially the nursery rhymes and things like that. But I really love putting a deep thought in my poetry and kind of grasping the emotion of that thought within my prose. So,
Absolutely. And hopefully today you'll have a different perspective on poetry is so much more than rhyming. There are these are the particular forms that we're going to try to get through today. We will probably not write every one of these. There's a couple of them that are a little more difficult, but I wanted to show you a little bigger view of some of the variety of poetry forms. And if you were with Rachel and I last year or want to go to the Writers Chat YouTube, you can find that where it talks very specifically about poetry elements, the ingredients of all the different rhyme, rhythm, all of the things, enjambment, where you break your lines. That whole talk is already cataloged in the Writers Chat YouTube, so take a look at that. And nonce is the one form that is just create your own form. You may use it only once, or it may become a standard poetry form such as echo verse or blank verse. Here's an analogy trellis that I found online, so I just copied it just the way it is. This was during a search of different analogies that one could use for talking about what poetry is, and this idea of all these form being kind of a trellis. But then there's a thing called the analogy trellis. There's a framework. This is a structured approach to organize all the different various elements, maybe not all of them in one poem, but which ones you're going to use and how you structure them. That's your framework. So it could be the poetry form like prose or echo verse. The connections are the linking the different ideas and themes and using these analogies. Another poetic element is, or writing element in general, and how you link those together. Those are the connections that you can make within a poem, within a work. And exploration encourages poets, you're delving into these relationships between all these concepts. And so there are some really interesting forms that have different voices and a question and an answer and some different things like that to express those really intricate relationships. And then the depth is what someone spoke about, just the idea of just the meaning and the depth where rhyme doesn't necessarily have the strength to give that emotive feeling and really deep emotional impact. But it forms, these rhymes form more humorous and maybe not as deep, but it also gives musicality to that. But the depth is something that I was really attracted to when I started writing poetry back in middle grade high school. Prose. This is who says poetry has to look like poetry. And I love that definition. And this idea that your poem lives in paragraphs. And underneath that, it's this idea of musicality, emotional compression, imagery, and imaginings of what your shape or what your form can be. And there are no line breaks other than what you might do in a paragraph form. So here's an example. This is the poem that I did place first in SELAH this year. And as you can see, there's a little poem kind of in a box off to the side, but you might not see it doesn't look like a poem at first glance. And when you look at some of the elements, it's got alliteration, it has examples, it has questions, it has all of the kind of exploring that depth. Shorter phrases. So, for example, the I'm not looking, hope hovers and floats, singing like a melody, so familiar with incandescent lightness of Emily's feather. Up here at top, it must. I was painted on a canvas of a dream I will never forget. I'm going to go to the next page, and we've got these drop down clear at the right lower, like Emily's feathers. I'm bringing those analogies through the whole piece, swaying freely, like promising hope beyond Grant Wood's plastic neighborhoods. Those are not full sentences, but they're written in a prose form with some sort of theme tying all of this together. Prose that has musicality, it has maybe no rhythm other than what you might find in a lyric or a song, or it has some alliteration. It has some themes that traverse through. Echo verse. Echo verse, I love this definition. It's like a poem in conversation with itself. One of the things that you can do is you can pull out a word or a fragment from the end of one line and pull it back to itself, and it's like a shadow talking to itself. An example of that is by Robert Lee Brewer, and many of these, you'll note that at the bottom of the screens, there's a link that it says list of 50 poetic forms for poets, and it's at the writersdigest.com site. Many of these poems, especially by Robert Lee Brewer, are from that site, but there are 169 identified forms at Writer's Digest. Other places have slightly higher number of forms because people are inventing forms all the time. And once they get used by various groups and accepted in the poetry community, then that gets given a name. So this one is something to talk about. It's an echo verse. Is there anything to know? No. Or a person to betray? A man who is doomed by other men. Men find solace in nothing. Nothing leads to what no one can know. No, I'd rather find something. Something. Now I'm going to have you look over. Let's see, I don't think yes. I'm going to have you look over to this, and I'm going to make this just a little larger for a minute. This is what he did with this poem. Here's an alternative to it. And you can see where he's taking that repetitive echo at the end and bringing it to its own line. Exactly the same words, but something to talk about, same title. Is there anything to know? No. A person to betray? A man is doomed by other men. Men. Solace find nothing, nothing. And then at the very end, I'd rather find something, something. And he's put punctuation very carefully through there. It's not all sentence structure, but I rather like this for a printed version of that echo verse, where you start with a question or a statement, and then you take that last word, no, and of course we're using not the exact word no, but you can change it to that. What's the name? My brain forgot the word that look sounds the same but looks different and is a different meaning.
Homonym?
Is that what it is? Thank you.
Homonym or homophone?
So, and in this case, betray, you look at it and you go, wait, what is that? But you hear the sound A at the end of the word. He's taking the syllable sound and repeating that. So there's a number of different ways you can do that echo. Could be the sound here. It's strictly men to men, nothing, nothing. But you could put a word that sounds like what you just said, or that is identical in sound, but it has a different meaning. So let's take 3 to 4 minutes and try an echo verse poem. Leave it to maybe 4 to 6 lines just so you can get the idea of how to create that echo verse poem. And I will leave both of these up that you can just peek at as you write. And if we, let's see, I've got a clock here. So any questions, feel free to ask as we write. And then anyone else that is going to be writing, think about if you can share even 3 or 4 lines after we're all done here. You don't have to share if you don't want to. So go ahead and write. And this is the echo verse poem.
Okay, and you are running the timer on this, Patricia?
Yes, and if somebody is done and they want to share, just pop right in and say, I'd like to share, and just go ahead and read what you've written, regardless if we're done with our time, and we'll just keep this active. And those of you that are listening in the replay for Writers Chat, go ahead and just take yourself a 2 to 3 minute timer and try to write this out as well.
And we'll actually just leave it running. So this will kind of go for that time period. And if
Good.
they can just fast forward on the recording if they want to.
This is a form I've never written before, but I found it really intriguing, and I probably do the question and answer kind of forms, but never in this structure. And you can see there's no rhythm, there's no rhyme, there's no syllable count, there's no line length requirement, nothing other than you just answer the next line with the end sound of the previous line. Let's see, I'll move our people here. Another thing you'll notice is that second line is either 1 or 2 syllables, just the short answer. It doesn't go on and continue with anything. It just is by itself. Okay, is anyone ready to share?
We have several in the chat. I don't know if those of you who would like to read yours out loud, you sure can, or we can read it for you if you want. You can indicate in the chat or start reading out loud.
I'll go ahead and read mine first, and then I'll open the chat up, and you tell me whether you want me to read it or whether you want to read it. So this is, I don't have a title yet. How high must I jump? Jump far. And I'm correct as I read. Far enough to touch the stars. Stars are lit with tomorrow's hope. Hope that we never stop reaching, reaching for a place of the sky. And then I would probably want to end it with the sky something there to be finished. Okay, so now I'm not sure. Can I see the chat? Yes, there we go. Pam, are you brave to read yours out loud?
Sure, I can do mine.
Okay.
The sky is cloudy today. Gray clouds cover the blue I know is still there. There is nothing I can do outside, so sewing is what I'll do. Throughout the day today, I'll play with fabric.
Nice.
This
And you
is
can look,
fun. I never heard this kind of poetry before, and I wrote it down so fast, almost without thinking. Gosh, that's fun.
one of the brilliant part of studying form is that you've got something to hang your words on. And this same poem, you could create it as a rhyming poem and make it humorous, like tripping over the fabric. And you can adjust it and change it because of the form. And one thing you might look on this is the she's so for everybody watching, this is more of the style that she's done right here, where there is the words there, and they're right in the same line and occasionally. And any way you do this, even if when you submit this poem somewhere, it doesn't say use an echo verse, you've got something to start. Even if it's not a true, unless you're entering a poem that says you have to use this, then you want to make sure it's identical to the form, but it just gets us started. Let's see, Kathy, would you like to share yours?
Are you talking to me? Is there?
Oh, I haven't gone backwards. I am starting at the end and then I'll go backwards, but I see
Okay.
Kathy Brasby right now, and
Yeah,
I thought
there-
it'd be fun if we see the poem while she reads it.
Okay, sure. Getting set up here. Um,
And we get to practice our poetic voices too.
yeah. I will not see defeat. Today, I guard my heart. Today, I overcome. No grief can stand. No worry snatches. Hope from my heart will not see defeat.
Nice. All right, let's see, Catherine Swartz.
Okay. Coming up. I feel so alone. One wants to be heard. Herd mentality drives us all constant striving, getting nowhere. Nowhere. We seek praise and appreciation to give us hope. Hope comes from a higher plane, plain to see if we will look and listen.
That's an extremely strong echo verse, Catherine. Very nice.
Very good.
All right, let's see who's next. Leslie, do you feel like reading out loud? I think we'll read all of these that put in the chat, and then maybe we'll just be a little more selective as we get finished with a couple others.
An invitation, have you heard? No. Do you not know it's for all humanity? I have not heard. Open for all, just have to accept. But for what? Well, eternity, of course. I can't go. But why not? Grace is for all who receive him. Who? Jesus, of course. He won't accept me. Of course he will, for there is grace. Grace.
Very nice.
Thank you.
I love the questions interposed in between all of this. And it makes you go beyond reading it to thinking what what you might answer for those different questions. All right, Stephanie, I see you've written something in the chat. Do you feel comfortable reading out loud?
Sure. Why do birds sing? Sing melodies abound in chorus. Us who believe, leave our cares below. Lo, I can hear them now.
Nice. She used very effectively the ending sound echoed rather than the whole word. And it's in writing it as you progress down the page, it's very, very clear adherence to that form. Nice. Okay. Is that the last one? Okay.
Dennis
So
put one in the bottom.
Oh, yes. Okay. Dennis. Oh, and we've got L.M. Baker too.
Okay. Says, I can hope for love and acceptance and to belong to one another, to one.
Very good.
Nice. And if you wanted that to be God, you could say the one. Very, very good. And that's such a short, concise, 4 lines. There you go. And that didn't take more than 2 to 3 minutes to put all of these together. All right, LM, I forget your first name.
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn. So that would not even be a trigger looking at LM. You might have to remind me again. Do you want to read that out loud or would you like us to read?
She
She
doesn't
says
have a
she
microphone.
doesn't have a microphone.
Okay, so I'm going to read it. What would you do when? Trust God. Even when you? I'll be with my Lord and Savior, Lord of lords and King of kings. Life here is just a breath, a fleeting flower. I'll be with the eternal King of kings. King. Nice. So, show of hands, who liked trying some different form and it's out of your comfort zone and I never thought I could write something like that with a specific form rather than just free verse. Yeah, it is so intriguing. Well, and I see our time is going quickly here. Let's see, do we have any more? Okay, now I'm going to close this and I'm going to go through a couple of them just to share. Let's see, the next one, Skeltonic Verse. We're not going to do this one today, but if you would like to take a screenshot of this, this is rhythm, rhyme piled on top of each other, short lines, quick rhymes that often repeat several times in a row before moving to a new sound. And a tumbling, breathless energy that pulls you forward line by line. And so it's a little like free verse, but there's extra elements that are maybe not always present in free verse. Free verse is really no rules. You just stack your thoughts, your meanings, however you want. Skeltonic verse is like that, but it's rhythm and rhyme on top of each other. And I've got an example of that if I can find my screen here. So irregular rhymes, rhythms, and somebody wrote bonus points for alliteration when they were describing this on the Writer's Digest, and it's often humorous. I have one that's called Neverland, thinking of the Peter Pan Neverland, but Neverland or Fly. And I have the Doctor Who verse universe in there. I have all kinds of writing on a carpet, and I would just sort of tumble down, and the ends would rhyme, internal rhyme, all sort of messy. And it was the most fun. I normally don't write humorous. And here's one, and I don't much claim to know. I know Dylan Thomas is a musician, right? But see how he's just stacking rhyme upon rhyme without, it's not iambic pentameter, there's no rhythm. If I sound like a villain who's out for a killing and I'm no father's keeper, and I don't fear the reaper and the late night creeper, nor rage against the dying, and is living or crying and all self-denial, so it's got this sort of just jammy, sort of just cascading down. It's also called a tumbling verse poem. So this is one that I think picture book writers especially would just grab onto, and kids love this kind of things. And if you were to put a story together and just sort of stream of consciousness try writing things, I think this would be a really fun, humorous kid book style. So that is Skeltonic Verse, and we won't try that one today. This one is Tilus. It's a small, mighty form built on syllable count. So you've got a little bit of the musicality, you've got to count your syllables, repetition, and it's very similar to cinquain. And then we did cinquain in that other poetry introduction that Rachel and I did. And it's each line is so many syllables, and you just count it out, and that's about the breadth of it. These are the rules. I'm going to look at my notes real quick here and see if I can find a sample. But these are it has 2 stanzas. That's it. The first stanza is 2 lines. The second is 1 line. So you've got 3 lines total. This one we're going to give a try too. There are 6 syllables in the first line, so you've got to count out as you're writing. And if you have a extra syllable there, you rewrite that till you get down to 6. And only 3 syllables in the second line, and 1 syllable word for the final line. 10 syllables total, so 6, 3, 1. And it should be focused on nature opening up the world. And it says for subject, I'm pretty sure. Let's see what I maybe missed there for subject. Oh, for nature. And the aim is to be epic in emotions rather than a really long poem that's just this epic 500-line poem. It's to be concise and get your thoughts down in a very few. It's a little like the 6-word poems that you write a whole poem just with 6 words. Here's a sample or a couple samples. This is also from the Writer's Digest site. And these were in the comments. If you read down in the comments on any form you're interested, people just pop their ideas from the description of this is a Tilus poem, verse poem. So the one on the left, the word sunrise, that's the title, and I could have capitalized it there and gave a little space. But the first line of the poem is night frost on field grasses. So night frost on field grasses. He's got 7, but is it 6 words or 7 syllables? So it's not quite what this asked for. 6 syllables. And the reason I put this down here was it doesn't matter if you write this and you want to keep this. It just wouldn't be called a Tilus poem if you have 7 syllables. But you've started somewhere. You've started with a structure, and you can break that structure and create a nonce poem that's your own structure. A cold sun, 3 syllables, sparks. It's a really nice, beautiful nature image poem. And that 1 extra syllable just is a technicality of the actual structure, but it's really beautiful. Here one is the sky is silent now. That's 6. Oh, did I count that right? Night frost on field grasses. And I am wrong. That is only 6 syllables on night frost on field grasses. I counted. When you do your fingers, sometimes I got an extra syllable there. So it is, so Taylor Graham, thank you for writing that. You are totally exactly a Tilus poem. So momentum, the sky is silent now, but snowflakes dance. I found that really, really intriguing. A little bit like a haiku, right? That has that nature and it has the imagery and it's just really condensed. So let's take 1 minute and see if we can come up with a Tilus poem. Or 2. All right, does anyone have anything written they'd like to share? See, I'm gonna pop up the chat again. Oh, nice. All right, Catherine Swartz writes, Joy in Boundaries. Would you like to read that?
Okay. Yeah. Based on my old bird watching experiences, as the footnote indicates, a
Nice.
hawk's ride, rising warmth, circling high, free.
Beautiful. Very nice. All right, Stephanie.
Marriage. To have and to hold him. Better, worse. Yes.
Beautiful. It is a little more difficult for some people. Like, different people don't ever feel like, oh, I'm not a good poet, I'm not a good writer because I can't do that one thing. We all are wired differently, and we all have a propensity, whether it's to alliteration or rhyming. I find I do not like rhyming, but I can do it, but I don't prefer it. And I don't do it as well as I do kind of getting in deep in emotions and trying to make those connections and questions within a poem. So don't feel bad if this one, and I only gave you 1 minute, barely a minute. So also show yourself some grace, some mercy. Like, this is, you really will have more time to create these. Anyone else have one they'd like to share? How many of you liked this form and think you could write more of these because it's concise, it's simple, it's understandable? Yeah. This is one that I would come back to when I think of what nature image might I try to write about. I wrote one, and I'm not loving it, but I'll read it. I have dusk dancing on earth. Dusk lights inside a dome, flickering earth. And I'm thinking that just, like, maybe the title doesn't match the rest, but I like the form a lot. And I think, like someone said in the comments, once you get the hang of it, it would be fun. And here you go, in an hour's time, you can get a dozen or more of these put together and have them in your group of your poems for entry into contest and such. I am 1 to 2 days from knowing if any of my 46, 7 poems made it to a place in the National Federation of State Poetry Society. And for everyone here, I'll try to grab the link and put it in the chat before we close this out. Every year, if your state has a poetry society that's connected to the National Federation of State Poetry Societies, you can enter up to 50 poems for $10. Or, like, I think it's $1 a poem if you're a member of any of those states. If your state doesn't have a chapter, you can join any of the chapters and find one that's cheaper. Ours used to be $8 a year. It went up to $20 a year in Iowa a couple years ago. But some of the states are free. And then it's free, then you're eligible to enter up to 50 poems, and they have a variety of forms, themes or subjects, and number of lines. So it's fun to look to sort of puzzle out this matrix of all the different possibilities a poem can be, and you just collect those and save them for big contests like that where they asked for optional 50 poems. Anyone else want to share? Okay, I don't see anything more in there. All right, so let's jump to at least one more. This one, I really love this idea. This idea of a diminishing verse, and we're not going to try this today, but each line loses a syllable or a word depending on how you set your rules. So it's a little flexibility of creating your own rule within a form. The poem then tapers down to almost nothing, like a single word that stands alone. And I think that would be super powerful. I have done similar things like that with, I did one that was a birth to death, and you could read it from death to birth, or you could read it birth to death, and just the things I was thinking of. But the form of it, if you started in the middle of that poem, it's like this funnel that goes down to a single word. And I started hello for the birth, and I ended, I can't remember how I ended it for death, but something thanks or gratitude or whatever, and I wove God's providence and sovereignty in our life and death. But the visual of that, I think, is very interesting. Okay, so sorry, these things pop up on the side. So this is description from Writer's Digest. Again, line 1 ends with the single word grad. Line 2 ends with rad. Line 3 ends with add, and there are no rules for rhymes, syllables, poem length, stanza, just a simple removal of a letter. There's another description that talks about removing the words as you go down rather than just removing the letters. So there's a little bit of, I'm not really sure if somebody had given a definition and it's not the official, or is it as a nonce poem that someone created with a different name, or using diminishing verse with removing the words. Poets can also remove sounds. So braille, rail, ale. And the example for that, this doesn't give that diminishing verse the sort of funnel look, but this is the taking a syllable off the last line. And I think I like the idea of this sort of funnel, removing words as you go along and creating that sort of shape. But bullies, so you can see where she glad, lad, add, stray, tray, ray. The letters are in the word, but it's just continued down. So it's an interesting form. It's one that I think would probably take a little more thought to get something meaningful. But I do like this poem. Bullies. The many children in my neighborhood are glad when all the adults chase around a certain lad who acts the bad guy of an anti-bully ad. But it's ironic that any child who might stray be knocked around like a cafeteria tray when children only want to shine like a sun's ray. So again, rhyming at the end, even though you're taking away syllables and diminishing, that is called diminishing verse. Double exposure. This one's another fun one. One poem actually holds 2 or 3. I have written a couple poems, and one of the first poems I won with the National Federation of State Poetry Society, it was The Loss of a Child. And I had the sorrowful loss theme on one poem on the left, and on the right, I had imagined what that life would be like if the child lived. And so you read it one way on every other line, you read it a different way, and you get a hope-filled, joy-filled poem on the right. And then when you read it together, it's just this mix of sorrow, but if you were alive, this sorrow in heaven, this. And it's just this sort of almost like contrapuntal in counterpoint in music, where it's got 2 themes and both are singing at the same time. That is what this is. The word double exposure comes from poetry, and it has a very structured, incredibly structured. And I'm guessing when people look at this, you go, oh, I keep all this. How do you keep all this stuff together? And how do you remember all these rules? And it's a little like sonnets and these long form poems that have loads of rules for everything. So iambic pentameter is 10 syllables, and it's down, 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 up, or reverse that, 12 to 16 lines. And then if it's 16 lines, it gives you a rhyme structure. And then the odd lines are bold, to the right side, and the even or not bold to the left. So all of this part of the double exposure, you've got two poems, and the odd lines make a poem, even lines make a poem, and placed together, it creates a third poem. And I'm going to show you an example here. And in this case, I just tiled or tabbed right. So you can imagine those that are indented being the one on the right. And I think there's one here that I'll show you at the same time that is a little different structure. And I did not include it in my sample here. But online on Writer's Digest and in the double exposure form, there's a couple different examples, and they have the bold on the right instead of just the indent. And that's a very interesting look. So this is one I thought this takes a lot of, and it's almost like creating two poems. If you can think of this, create two different poems on the same theme using the same subjects, similar tone, like could one be humorous and one serious? It could, but it would be really weird and sort of whiplash if you go back and forth and read the whole thing together. So probably the same tone. If it's humorous, do humorous both sides and see what it happens, or serious and see what happens. And then you'll end up rewriting and revising many, many times in this type of form because you're trying to also rhyme and you're trying also to do that iambic pentameter. But the complexity of this style, don't let this stop you from writing poetry or saying, oh, I can't write poetry because of this form. But if you like structure, if you like sort of those rigid rules or those really, there's almost a mathematics to this that I want to put together this whole thing and craft this like a puzzle. And that's a really fun thing to do. Okay. And then there's the nonce. This is an invented form. You can create it however you want. You are the inventor as a poet. And so from today's poetry, take and write a 4 to 5 line max. Could be 2 lines, it could be 1 line. Create something that is similar to some of the forms that you saw, that has elements. And then I want to share for our last form here, I want you to share your structure, what framework you gave it. If it's different than Tilus, and if we go back here and I'll just repeat these, I think it's the yellow ones here. So echo verse, a poem in conversation with itself. You can take elements of that, take elements of this rhyming, tumbling kind of format. This one is the syllable count and repetition. Create a syllable count that's your own. Say the first line is 4 syllables, the second is 8, or whatever you want to create. Diminishing verse, whether you take a word or a syllable or a part of a word out and you tumble down to nothing. If you want to add that every word rhymes at the end or there's no rhyming, create your own form. And double exposure, whether it's 2 poems left to right, and you could even have a 4-line double exposure poem that you create a 2-line poem and another 2-line poem, and then see what they sound separately and how they sound together. Or you could say, I'm going to completely create my own form, and I'll tell you what my form is or what my structure is. So let's take just 3 to 4 minutes, and this is our last exercise, and feel free to read those. I'm going to check the rest of the slides here. And the sample poem, I want to take 2 of the sample poems, if you've got a structure, and I'm going to add it to my PowerPoint when we get done. This is where we need elevator music. So if you're listening at the Writers Chat YouTube channel, take time and generate your draft and drop in the comments your nonce poem, your structure. And when you drop your poem in, then after that, give the structure that you've attached to your poem and see if someone else picks that up and decides to use your structure. You can even give your structure its own name.
So this is a combine the different styles type of poem?
This is make it anything you want. This is no structure required. But if you do absolutely no structure, it's usually free verse, right? If
Yeah.
you do prose, paragraphs, that's the form. You're creating a brand new form, and a brand new
Okay.
form is called nonce. It's like a one out, one time, and I'll go ahead and pop that back up there. A single form invented, often for one poem, and often never used again in quite that same way. But if somebody picks that form up and goes, this is really fun, I want to try this. And if enough people share that form that you name or that you invent could become one of these named forms that are, for example, on the Writer's Digest. It is creating your own poem, inventing your own structure, your own rules. You could have rhyme, rhythm, um, iambic pentameter or not, and different combinations of any of those rules. It can be as
Patricia, I
simple
knew
as,
a guy that was in a writing group when I first started
yes,
writing, and he created his own cube version.
yes,
I think he did. I don't remember what the typical cube was, but he made it bigger or less, or he did something different and just created his own way of doing that cube. The cadence of it, everything was very different than what a traditional cube was.
quite often in these contests, there's a break the rules entry contest, and it will say, tell us what form you've used and how you've broken the traditional rules. Sonnet is almost always when they say, do a sonnet but break the rules. And so somebody will say, instead of, yeah, we're going to keep 14 lines because that's the traditional sonnet is always 14 lines, but it's 3, 3, 3, 2. And so they said, let's do 7 stanzas of 2 each. And we're calling it a sonnet, but it's a different type of sonnet. And another person did a different arrangement of that form. You have rules. It's good for structure. It's like this little framework. The same with when you write fiction. You've got typically it's this many words. Typically there's these tropes, that kind of thing. But if you want to create a blended fiction genre, I'm gonna have a little bit of romance over here and a little bit of sci-fi. And now the big one is romantasy, romantic fantasy. And nonce is a little like that. It's creating a new form. You decide the rules. You have to have some rules, or it's
Right.
free verse. But you decide how many, what those rules are, and you create your own form. One form that I created that I use quite often in various ways is a is a internal voice, like an answer or a reply to something else. And I've won a couple contests with this. Is here's a portion of it, here's a stanza, and then a line break, and here's an answer to that stanza or a comment about what it was just read, or it's 2 different voices. So the first stanza is voice 1, the second line or 2 or 3 lines is a stanza with a different voice, and they're talking to each other. And what I usually do is here's the typical narrative, the verse, and then I will interject my internal voice as that answer or thoughts about what I just saw or envisioned. And it's a little bit like the which one Let me see if I can find the one. This is not ideal, but thank you for paging through this with me here. It's a little like the echo verse. It's like I'm having a conversation with myself, but the narrator versus my internal voice. What I say on the outside, what I see, what I experience versus what do I think about that experience. It has elements of prose, but it has this double exposure idea that you can read things differently. If you pull out that internal verse, it still reads. It still reads as a complete poem, but I've just interjected that internal voice into it and give a little more depth and a little more pulling the reader from what they just read to what do you think about that? And so that's not an actual form I invented, but it's a form I'm using. I guess I shouldn't say I invented it, but if you are truly creating a new form, you are inventing that form. If I were to formalize it so that it could be repeated, there's the named form that I would give it. Right now, it's just like a two conversations, two voices, and then I found something that was like that when I went into like on forms. So maybe I didn't create it. Maybe I just thought about it, and it's actually a form that's out there. But I've done things.
How
I've
about we let
created. Go
Stephanie
ahead.
read? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
How about we let Stephanie read her poem
Yes.
and close out?
I was being funny responding to Lisa's comment about the diminishing verse sounding like a no-nay. So I started, I do love a good no-nay, tossed back with Chardonnay. It helps a poet say words that convey, if I may. You say, okay.
Nice.
I love
Very
it.
nice.
Love it. Love it.
Yes, and you'll find a lot of similarities from form to form because you have only so many elements, right, to rearrange and change and such. So the numbers of lines, the numbers of syllables give that broadening. Here you can do greater things. That's really good. And if you feel like this is too much and too many things in one poem form, you look for another poetry form and try one that's more to what energy you have to give it. Do you hit the tab button to begin the next line in a poem? Yes, you can do that. But I'm going to tell you that if you use Google Docs and Word and open, can't think of the name, open something for documents, some of those things don't stick. So if you can use the style formatter, and you will find that in a Word document. I'm going to open this up here and downsize this. Right here, this style pane. And if you will create your own styles, so an indented poem, now all of these I don't use, but you would use heading 1. Something is a heading 1. That's normal, which is not right. It should be heading 1. But if I click heading 1, you see how it jumped over here? And you can change these styles and just create that indent so it's an automatic style it the way you want it. When you just start typing in and you tab and then you go to move it somewhere else, it often changes.
All right.
So I think that's the last. I'm going to close this and stop sharing.
Well, thank you, Patricia. This has been absolutely delightful. We've enjoyed dabbling in these different types of poetry. Who knew there were so many? You poets know, but the rest of us had no clue. So thank you for sharing with us. And thank you all for joining us here live. And again, if you're watching the replay, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you here next week. But before we go, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa, I think, who's going to tell us a little bit about next week.
Yeah, next week we're going to have Larry Leach come back as a returning guest to share about fatal flaws. Boy, my poetry tongue is tangled. So definitely join us for that. Fatal flaws in writing. So it'll be a good one to learn. I think it's going to focus a little more on editing, if I remember right. Brandy's the one who initially chatted with him. So you will learn as we will learn. Also, a quick announcement. This Friday, we will not have a writer's chat support meeting since there's a lot of things going on for everyone behind the scenes. So we'll take a little break from this Friday's writer's chat and meet again next Friday for those who like to come for the writing and chat support on Fridays, which meets at the same time that our writer's chat meeting on Tuesdays does. So with that, I think
before you end the recording, Patricia, you had asked people to please stop by the YouTube channel and as they watch this episode and add their poems to the comments. Would you want people to leave their poems on our Facebook page? You're muted.
You're muted.
Yes, absolutely, if you'd like to. It's sometimes scary leaving things that you've written and you haven't, like, do I want to revise it before I post it? But if you post first draft, this form, and drop your poem in there, it might encourage other people to try out those different forms. Feel free to do that. And those listening, make sure you drop your examples as you've practiced and worked. Drop those in the comments too.
Well, thank you again. It's just been a lot of fun. Thank you, Patricia. We've enjoyed it.
You are welcome.
We'll see you all next week. Till then.
See you next week.
Happy poetry inventing.